The Tales of the Laxdale Saga is brought to you by NotaProfit.org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. The Laxdale Saga Part 7 Chapter Roman 43. Kjartan comes back to Iceland AD 1001. A little after this Bolli talked to his uncle Olaf, and said, "It has come to this, uncle, that I have it in mind settle down and marry, for I am now grown up to man's estate. In this matter I should like to have the assistance of your words and your backing up, for most of the men hereabouts are such as will set much store by your words." Olaf replied, "Such is the case with most women. I am minded to think that they would be fully well matched in you for a husband. And I take it you have not broached this matter without first having made up your mind as to where you mean to come down." Bolli said, "I shall not go beyond this countryside to woo myself a wife, whilst there is such an goodly match so near at hand. My will is to woo Gudrun, Osvif's daughter, for she is now the most renowned of women." Olaf answered, "Ah, that is just a matter with which I will have nothing to do. To you it is in no way less well known, Bolli, than to me, what talk there was of the love between Kjartan and Gudrun. But if you have set your heart very much on this, I will put no hindrance in the way, if you and Osvif settle the matter between you. But have you said anything to Gudrun about it?" Bolli said that he had once hinted at it, but that she had not given much heed to it. "But I think, however, that Osvif will have most to say in the matter." Olaf said Bolli could go about the business as it pleased himself. Not very long after Bolli rode from home with Olaf's sons, Halldor and Steinthur. There were 12 of them together. They rode to Lager, and Osvif and his song gave them a good welcome. Bolli said he wished to speak to Osvif, and he set forth his wooing, and asked for the hand of Gudrun, his daughter. Osvif answered in this wise, "As you know, Bolli, Gudrun is a widow, and has herself to answer for her. But, as for myself, I shall urge this on." Osvif now went to see Gudrun, and told her that Bolli Thorleikson had come there, and has asked you in marriage. It is for you now to give the answer to this matter, and herein I may speedily make known my own will, which is, that Bolli will not be turned away, if my counsel shall avail. Gudrun answered, "You make a swift work of looking into this matter. Bolli himself once bespoke it before me, and I rather warded it off, and the same is still uppermost in my mind." Osvif said, "Many a man will tell you that this is spoken more in overweening pride than in wise forethought, if you refuse such a man as is Bolli. But as long as I am alive, I shall look out for you, my children, in all affairs which I know better how to see through things than you do." And as Osvif took such a strong view of the matter, Gudrun, as far as she was concerned, would not give an utter refusal, yet was most unwilling on all points. The sons of Osvif's urged the matter on eagerly, seeing what great avail an alliance with Bolli would be to them. So the long and short of the matter was that the betrothal took place then and there, and the wedding was to be held at the time of the winter nights. Thereupon, Bolli rode home, and told this settlement to Olaf, who did not hide his displeasure thereat. Bolli stayed on at home till he was to go to the wedding. He asked his uncle to it, but Olaf accepted it nowise quickly, though, at last, he yielded to the prayers of Bolli. It was a noble feast this at Lager. Bolli stayed there the winter after. There was not much love between Gudrun and Bolli so far as she was concerned. When the summer came, and ships began to go and come between Iceland and Norway, the tidings spread to Norway that Iceland was all Christian. King Olaf was very glad at that, and gave leave to go to Iceland unto all those men whom he had kept as hostages, and to fare whenever they liked. Kjartan answered, for he took the lead of all those who had been hostages, "Have great thanks, Lord King, and this will be the choice we take, to go and see Iceland this summer." Then King Olaf said, "I must not take back my word, Kjartan, yet my order pointed rather to other men than to yourself, for in my view you, Kjartan, have been more of a friend than a hostage through your stay here. My wish would be that you should not set your heart on going to Iceland, though you have noble relations there. For I take it, you could choose for yourself such a station in life in Norway, the like of which would not be found in Iceland. Then Kjartan answered, May our Lord reward you, sire, for all the honors you have bestowed on me since I came into your power, but I am still in hopes that you will give leave to me, no less than to the others you have kept back for a while. The king said so it should be, but avowed that it would be hard for him to get in his place any untitled man such as Kjartan was. That winter Kalf Asgeirsson had been in Norway and had brought, the autumn before, west, away from England, the ship and merchandise he and Kjartan had owned. And when Kjartan had got leave for his journey to Iceland, Kalf and he set themselves to get the ship ready. And when the ship was all ready, Kjartan went to see Ingibjorg, the king's sister. She gave him a cheery welcome, and made room for him to sit beside her, and they fell talking together, and Kjartan tells Ingibjorg that he has arranged his journey to Iceland. Then Ingibjorg said, I am minded to think, Kjartan, that you have done this of your own wilfulness, rather than because you have been urged by men to go away from Norway and to Iceland. But thenceforth words between them were drowned in silence. Amidst this Ingibjorg turns to a mead cask that stood near her, and takes out of it a white coif inwoven with gold, and gives it to Kjartan, saying that it was far too good for Gudrun Osvif's daughter to fold it round her head, yet you will give her the coif as a bridal gift, for I wish the wives of the Icelanders to see as much as that she with whom you have had your talks in Norway comes of no thrall's blood. It was in a pocket of costly stuff, and was altogether a most precious thing. Now El shall not go to see you off, said Ingibjorg. Fare you well, and hail. After that Kjartan stood up and embraced Ingibjorg, and people told it as a true story that they took it sorely to heart being parted. And now Kjartan went away and unto the king, and told the king he now was ready for his journey. Then the king led Kjartan to his ship and many men with him. And when they came to where the ship was floating with one of its gangways to land, the king said, Here is a sword, Kjartan, that you shall take from me at our parting. Let this weapon be always with you, for my mind tells me you will never be a weapon-bitten man if you bear this sword. It was a most noble keepsake, and much ornamented. Kjartan thanked the king with fair words for all the honor and advancement he had bestowed on him while he had been in Norway. Then the king spoke, This I will bid you, Kjartan, that you keep your faith well. After that they parted, the king and Kjartan in dear friendship, and Kjartan stepped on board his ship. The king looked after him and said, Great is the worth of Kjartan and his kindred, but to cope with their fate is not an easy matter. Chapter Roman 44. Kjartan comes home A.D. 1001. Now Kjartan and Kalf set sail for the main. They had a good wind, and were only a short time out at sea. They hove into White River in Bergfirth. The tidings spread far and wide of the coming of Kjartan. When Olaf his father and his other kinsfolk heard of it, they were greatly rejoiced. Olaf rode at once from the west out of the dales and south to Bergfirth, and there was a very joyful meeting between father and son. Olaf asked Kjartan to go and stay with him, with as many of his men as he liked to bring. Kjartan took that well, and said that there only of all places in Iceland he meant to abide. Olaf now rides home to Herdholt, and Kjartan remained with his ship during the summer. He now heard of the marriage of Gudrun, but did not trouble himself at all over it, but that had heretofore been a matter of anxiety to many. Gudmund, Salman's son, Kjartan's brother-in-law, and Thurid, his sister, came to his ship, and Kjartan gave them a cheery welcome. Asgeir Eiderdrake came to the ship too to meet his son Kalf, and journeying with him was Hrefna his daughter, the fairest of women. Kjartan bade his sister Thurid have such of his wares as she liked, and the same Kalf said to Hrefna. Kalf now unlocked a great chest, and bade them go and have a look at it. That day a gale sprang up, and Kjartan and Kalf had to go out to moor their ship, and when that was done they went home to the booths. Kalf was the first to enter the booth, where Thurid and Hrefna had turned out most of the things in the chest. Just then Hrefna snatched up the coif and unfolded it, and they had much to say as to how precious a thing it was. Then Hrefna said she would coif herself with it, and Thurid said she had better, and Hrefna did so. When Calf saw that, he gave her to understand that she had done amiss, and bade her take it off at her swiftest. For that is the one thing that we, Kjartan and I, do not own in common. And as he said this, Kjartan came into the booth. He had heard their talk, and fell in at once, and told them there was nothing amiss. So Hrefna sat still with the headdress on. Kjartan looked at her heedfully, and said, I think the coif becomes you very well, Hrefna, says he, and I think it fits the best that both together, coif and maiden, be mine. Then Hrefna answered, Most people take it that you are in no hurry to marry, and also that the woman you woo, you will be sure to get for wife. Kjartan said it would not matter much whom he married, but he would not stand being kept long, awaiting wooer by any woman. Now I see that this gear suits you well, and it suits well that you become my wife. Hrefna now took off the headdress and gave it to Kjartan, who put it away in a safe place. Gudmund and Thurid asked Kjartan to come north to them for a friendly stay some time that winter, and Kjartan promised the journey. Calf Asgeirsson betook himself north with his father. Kjartan and he now divided their partnership, and that went off altogether in good nature and friendship. Kjartan also rowed from his ship westward to the Dales, and they were 12 of them together. Kjartan now came home to Herdholt, and was joyfully received by everybody. Kjartan had his goods taken to the west from the ship during the autumn. The 12 men who rowed with Kjartan stayed at Herdholt all the winter. Olaf and Osvif kept to the same wont of asking each other to their house, which was that each should go to the other every other autumn. That autumn the wassail was to be at Lager, and Olaf and all the Herdholtings were to go thither. Gudrun now spoke to Bolli, and said she did not think he had told her the truth in all things about the coming back of Kjartan. Bolli said he had told the truth about it, as best he knew it. Gudrun spoke little on this matter, but it could be easily seen that she was very displeased, and most people would have it that she still was pining for Kjartan, although she tried to hide it. Now time glides on till the autumn feast was to be held at Lager. Olaf got ready and bade Kjartan come with him. Kjartan said he would stay at home and look after the household. Olaf bade him not to show that he was angry with his kinsmen. Call this to mind, Kjartan, that you have loved no man so much as your foster, brother Bolli, and it is my wish that you should come, for things will soon settle themselves between you, kinsmen, if you meet each other. Kjartan did as his father bade him. He took the scarlet clothes that King Olaf had given him at parting, and dressed himself gaily. He girded his sword, the king's gift, on, and he had a gilt helm on his head, and on his side a red shield with the holy cross painted on it in gold. He had in his hand a spear, with the socket inlaid with gold. All his men were gaily dressed. There were in all between 20 and 30 men of them. They now rode out of Herdholt, and went on till they came to Lager. There were a great many men gathered together already. Chapter Roman 45. Kjartan marries Hrefna, A.D. 1002. Bolli, together with the sons of Osvif, went out to meet Olaf and his company, and gave them a cheery welcome. Bolli went to Kjartan and kissed him, and Kjartan took his greeting. After that they were seen into the house. Bolli was of the merriest towards them, and Olaf responded to that most heartily, but Kjartan was rather silent. The feast went off well. Now Bolli had some stud, horses which were looked upon as the best of their kind. The stallion was great and goodly, and had never failed at fight. It was light of coat, with red ears and forelock. 3 mares went with it, of the same hue as the stallion. These horses Bolli wished to give to Kjartan, but Kjartan said he was not a horsey man, and could not take the gift Olaf bade him take the horses, for these are most noble gifts. Kjartan gave a flat refusal. They parted after this nowise blithely, and the Herdholtings went home, and all was quiet. Kjartan was rather gloomy all the winter, and people could have but little talk of him. Olaf thought this a great misfortune. That winter after Yule Kjartan got ready to leave home, and there were 12 of them together, bound for the country, sides of the north. They now rode on their way till they came to Isbjorness, north in Willowdale, and there Kjartan was greeted with the greatest blitheness and cheerfulness. The housing there was of the noblest. Hall, the son of Gudmund, was about 20 winters old, and took much after the kindred of the men of Salmon, River, Dale, and it is all men say, there was no more valiant, looking a man in all the Northland. Hall greeted Kjartan, his uncle, with the greatest blitheness. Sports are now at once started at Isbjorness, and men were gathered together from far and near throughout the country, sides, and people came from the west, from Midfirth, and from Ness, and Waterdale all the way, and from out of Longdale, and there was a great gathering together. It was the talk of all folk, how strikingly Kjartan showed above other men. Now the sports were set going, and Hall took the lead. He asked Kjartan to join in the play, and I wish, kinsman, you would show your courtesy in this. Kjartan said, I have been training for sports but little of late, for there were other things to do with King Olaf, but I will not refuse you this for once. So Kjartan now got ready to play, and the strongest men there were chosen out to go against him. The game went on all day long, but no man had either strength or litheness of limb to cope with Kjartan. And in the evening when the games were ended, Hall stood up and said, It is the wish and offer of my father concerning those men who have come from the farthest hither, that they all stay here over night and take up the pastime again tomorrow. At this message there was made a good cheer, and the offer deemed worthy of a great man. Calf Asbjornsen was there, and he and Kjartan were dearly fond of each other. His sister Hrefna was there also, and was dressed most showily. There were over 100 over 120 men in the house that night, and the next day sides were divided for the games again. Kjartan sat by and looked on at the sports. Thurid, his sister, went to talk to him and said, It is told me, brother, that you have been rather silent all the winter, and men say it must be because you are pining after Gudrun, and set forth as a proof thereof that no fondness now is shown between you and Bolli, such as through all time there had been between you. Do now the good and befitting thing, and don't allow yourself to take this to heart, and grudge not your kinsman a good wife. To me it seems your best counsel to many, as you bespoke it last summer, although the match be not altogether even for you, where Hrefna is, for such a match you cannot find within this land. Asgeir, her father, is a noble and a high-born man, and he does not lack wealth wherewith to make this match fairer still. Moreover, another daughter of his is married to a mighty man. You have also told me yourself that Calf Asbjornsen is the doughtiest of men, and their way of life is of the stateliest. It is my wish that you go and talk to Hrefna, and I ween you will find that their great wits and goodliness go together. Kjartan took this matter up well, and said she had ably pleaded the case. After this, Kjartan and Hrefna are brought together, that they may have their talk by themselves, and they talked together all day. In the evening Thurid asked Kjartan how he liked the manner in which Hrefna turned her speech. He was well pleased about it, and said he thought the woman was in all ways one of the noblest as far as he could see. The next morning men were sent to Asgeir to ask him to Isbjorness, and now they had a parley between them on this affair, and Kjartan wooed Hrefna, Asgeir's daughter. Asgeir took up the matter with a good will, for he was a wise man, and saw what an honorable offer was made to them. Calf, too, urged the matter on very much, saying, I will not let anything be spared towards the dowry. Hrefna, in her turn, did not make unwilling answers, but bade her father follow his own counsel. So now the match was covenanted and settled before witnesses. Kjartan would hear of nothing but that the wedding should be held at Herdholt, and Asgeir and Calf had nothing to say against it. The wedding was then settled to take place at Herdholt, when 5 weeks of summer had passed. After that, Kjartan rode home with great gifts. Olaf was delighted at these tidings, for Kjartan was much merrier than before he left home. Kjartan kept fast through Lent, following therein the example of no man in this land, and it is said he was the first man who ever kept fast in this land. Men thought it so wonderful a thing that Kjartan could live so long without meat, that people came over long ways to see him. In a like manner, Kjartan's other ways went beyond those of other men. Now Easter passed, and after that Kjartan and Olaf made ready a great feast. At the appointed time Asgeir and Kalf came from the north, as well as Gudmund and Hall, and altogether there were 60 men. Olaf and Kjartan had already many men gathered together there. It was a most brave feast, and for a whole week the feasting went on. Kjartan made Hrefna a bridal gift of the rich headdress, and a most famous gift was that, for no one was there so knowing or so rich as ever to have seen or possessed such a treasure. For it is the saying of thoughtful men that 8 ounces of gold were woven into the coif. Kjartan was so merry at the feast that he entertained every one with his talk, telling of his journey. Men did marvel much how great were the matters that entered into that tale, for he had served the noblest of lords King Olaf Tryggvason. And when the feast was ended, Kjartan gave Gudmund and Hall good gifts, as he did to all the other great men. The father and son gained great renown from this feast. Kjartan and Hrefna loved each other very dearly. Chapter Roman 46. Feast at Herdholt and the loss of Kjartan's sword. A.D. 1002 Olaf and Osvif were still friends, though there was some deal of ill will between the younger people. That summer Olaf had his feast half a month before winter, and Osvif was also making ready a feast, to be held at winter nights, and they each asked the other to their homes, with as many men as each deemed most honorable to himself. It was Osvif's turn to go first to the feast at Olaf's, and he came to Herdholt at the time appointed. In his company were Bolli and Gudrun, and the sons of Osvif. In the morning one of the women on going down the hall was talking how the ladies would be shown to their seats. And just as Gudrun had come right against the bedroom wherein Kjartan was wont to rest, and where even then he was dressing and slipping on a red kirtle of scarlet, he called out to the woman who had been speaking about the seating of the women, for no one else was quicker in giving the answer, Hrefna shall sit in the high seat, and be most honored in all things so long as I am alive. But before this Gudrun had always had the high seat at Herdholt and everywhere else. Gudrun heard this, and looked at Kjartan, and flushed up, but said nothing. The next day Gudrun was talking to Hrefna, and said she ought to coif herself with the headdress, and show people the most costly treasure that had ever come to Iceland. Kjartan was near, but not quite close, and heard what Gudrun said, and he was quicker to answer than Hrefna. She shall not coif herself with the headgear at this feast, for I set more store by Hrefna owning the greatest of treasures than by the guests having it to feast thereon their eyes at this time. The feast at Olaf's was to last a week. The next day Gudrun spoke on the sly to Hrefna, and asked her to show her the headdress, and Hrefna said she would. The next day they went to the bower where the precious things were kept, and Hrefna opened a chest and took out the pocket of costly stuff, and took from thence the coif and showed it to Gudrun. She unfolded the coif and looked at it a while, but said no word of praise or blame. After that Hrefna put it back, and they went to their places, and after that all was joy and amusement. And the day the guests should ride away, Kjartan busied himself much about matters in hand, getting change of horses for those who had come from afar, and speeding each one on his journey as he needed. Kjartan had not his sword King's gift with him while he was taken up with these matters, yet was he seldom wont to let it go out of his hand. After this he went to his room where the sword had been, and found it now gone. He then went and told his father of the loss. Olaf said, "We must go about this most gently. I will get men to spy into each batch of them as they ride away." And he did so. And the wight had to ride with Osvif's company, and to keep an eye upon men turning aside, or baiting. They rode up past Shaws, and past the homesteads which are called Shaws, and stopped at one of the homesteads at Shaws, and got off their horses. Thorolf, son of Osvif, went out from the homestead with a few other men. They went out of sight amongst the brushwood, whilst the others tarried at the Shaw's homestead, and followed him all the way unto Salmon river, where it flows out of Laxdale, and said he would turn back there. Thorolf said it would have done no harm, though he had gone nowhere at all. The night before a little snow had fallen so that footprints could be traced, and rode back to the brushwood, and followed the footprints of Thorolf to a certain ditch or bog. He groped down with his hand, and grasped the hilt of a sword, and wished to have witnesses with him to this, and rode for Thorarinn in Laxdale tongue, and he went with Anne to take up the sword. After that, and brought the sword back to Kjartan. Kjartan wrapped it in a cloth, and laid it in a chest. The place was afterwards called Sword Ditch, where Anne and Thorarinn had found the king's gift. This was all kept quiet. The scabbard was never found again. Kjartan always treasured the sword less hereafter than heretofore. This affair Kjartan took much to heart, and would not let the matter rest there. Olaf said, "Do not let it pain you. True, they have done a nowise pretty trick, but you have got no harm from it. We shall not let people have this to laugh at, that we make a quarrel about such a thing, these being but friends and kinsmen on the other side." And through these reasonings of Olaf, Kjartan let matters rest in quiet. After that Olaf got ready to go to the feast at Lager at winter nights, and told Kjartan he must go too. Kjartan was very unwilling thereto, but promised to go at the bidding of his father. Hrefna was also to go, but she wished to leave her coif behind. "Good wife," Thorgerd said, "whenever will you take out such a peerless keepsake, if it is to lie down in chests when you go to feasts?" Hrefna said, "Many folk say that it is not unlikely that I may come to places where I have fewer people to envy me than at Lager." Thorgerd said, "I have no great belief in people who let such things fly here from house to house." And because Thorgerd urged it eagerly, Hrefna took the coif, and Kjartan did not forbid it when he saw how the will of his mother went. After that they betake themselves to the journey, and came to Lager in the evening, and had a goodly welcome there. Thorgerd and Hrefna handed out their clothes to be taken care of. But in the morning, when the women should dress themselves, Hrefna looked for the coif, and it was gone from where she had put it away. It was looked for far and near, and could not be found. Gudrun said it was most likely the coif had been left behind at home, or that she had packed it so carelessly that it had fallen out on the way. Hrefna now told Kjartan that the coif was lost. He answered and said it was no easy matter to try to make them take care of things, and bade her now leave matters quiet, and told his father what game was up. Olaf said, "My will is still as before, that you leave alone and let pass by this trouble, and I will probe this matter to the bottom in quiet. For I would do anything that you and Bolli should not fall out. Best to bind up a whole flesh, kinsman," says he. Kjartan said, "I know well, father, that you wish the best for everybody in this affair. Yet I know not whether I can put up with being thus overborne by these folk of Lager." The day that men were to ride away from the feast, Kjartan raised his voice and said, "I call on you, cousin Bolli, to show yourself more willing henceforth than hitherto to do to us as behoves a good man and true. I shall not set this matter forth in a whisper, for within the knowledge of many people it is that a loss has befallen here of a thing which we think has slipped into your own keep. This harvest, when we gave a feast at Herdholt, my sword was taken. It came back to me, but not the scabbard. Now again there has been lost here a keepsake which men will esteem a thing of price. Come what may, I will have them both back." Bolli answered, "What you put down to me, Kjartan, is not my fault, and I should have looked for anything else from you sooner than that you would charge me with theft." Kjartan says, "I must think that the people who have been putting their heads together in this affair are so near to you that it ought to be in your power to make things good if you but would. You affront us far beyond necessity, and long we have kept peaceful in face of your enmity. But now it must be made known that matters will not rest as they are now." Then Gudrun answered his speech and said, "Now you rake up a fire which it would be better should not smoke. Now, let it be granted, as you say, that there be some people here who have put their heads together with a view to the coif disappearing. I can only think that they have gone and taken what was their own. Think what you like of what has become of the headdress, but I cannot say I dislike it, though it should be bestowed in such a way as that Hrefna should have little chance to improve her apparel with it henceforth. After that they parted heavy of heart, and the Herdholtings rode home. That was the end of the feasts, yet everything was to all appearances quiet. Nothing was ever heard of the headdress, but many people held the truth to be that Thorolf had burnt it in fire by the order of Gudrun, his sister. Early that winter Asgeir Eiderdrake died. His sons inherited his estate and chattels.